Good afternoon and welcome to the fiscal year 2017 Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program webinar for Category 3 Implementation and Expansion Grantees. Today we have a number of excellent speakers. We have Joanne Barrows, who's the Director of Mental Health for Norfolk County Sheriff's Office in Massachusetts. Joanne is a current fiscal year 16 Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program grantee, and she's going to share a little bit about her experience with the grant award being a year into this process. We also have Maria Fryer, who's the Justice Systems and Corrections Policy Advisor for Substance Abuse and Mental Health at the Bureau of Justice Assistance's U.S. Department of Justice. She is a person that you heard from on the last orientation webinar, and she oversees the Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program. We also have Nikki Smith-Key, who's a Senior Policy Analyst at the Council of State Governments Justice Center. She oversees the law enforcement grantee work. And then I am Sarah Wurzburg. I'm a Deputy Program Director for Behavioral Health at the Council of State Governments Justice Center, and I oversee the Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program Training and Technical Assistance. So to begin with, we would like to welcome you and congratulate you again on your awards. We are looking forward to working with you. We'll also have an overview of Category 3, which is the grant award that you've received, which is called Implementation and Expansion Grants. We'll talk a little bit about what our technical assistance will look like for Category 3 JMHCP grantees, and then we'll hear from Joanne, who will talk about her experience as a grantee. And at the end, we will have plenty of time for questions and answers. If you have questions during the webinar, there's a chat panel on the lower right-hand side, so feel free to enter those questions. We will save them for the end, and we will be able to open lines at the end so people will be able to ask questions as well. I'm going to turn it over to Maria Fryer to give an introduction and talk about the Bureau of Justice Assistance.
Great. Thank you, Sarah. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Maria Fryer, and I want to once again welcome you and congratulate you on your award. We are so excited to have such an interesting group of grantees focusing on implementing and expanding your work across the country. And as you may remember, for the large orientation webinar, I am the Policy Advisor for the Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Grant Program, or JMHCP, in the Policy Office at the Bureau of Justice Assistance, also known as BJA. My background comes from local and state administration from programs just like the ones you're working on. I share your passion for thinking through solutions for people with behavioral health needs in the justice system. This grant category is truly the bread and butter of JMHCP, focusing on the development of behavioral health and justice strategies for people involved in the justice system. It is the broadest category of JMHCP. So now a little bit about BJA. Just want to tell you I work in the policy office once again as the policy advisor for mental health and substance use and law enforcement at the Bureau of Justice Assistance, and we're excited to have you here to talk a bit more about the Category 3 Implementation and Expansion Grants and really focus on your unique goals and needs. And now I'll turn it back over to Sarah to provide some background on the JMHCP TA that's available through the Council of State Government Justice Center. Sarah?
Thanks, Maria. So the organization I work for is called the Council of State Governments. It's a bipartisan policy solutions organization dedicated to all three branches of government. And we specifically work in the Justice Center, which is focused on policy solutions for criminal justice agencies. Within the Justice Center, we work in the Behavioral Health Division at the Justice Center, and we have a number of projects. One of the things that we're lucky to do is be the training and technical assistance provider for the Justice and Mental Health Collaboration Program. We also work on a bunch of different initiatives through this. We're also the training and technical assistance provider for Second Chance Act. So the Council of State Governments Justice Center runs the National Reentry Resource Center. We have learning sites for criminal justice and mental health, both for law enforcement and for diversion. We also are a partner on the Stepping Up initiative, which is a national initiative to reduce the prevalence of mental illnesses in jails. And we also work on a lot of law enforcement work, which you'll hear a little bit about later, including the Police Mental Health Collaboration Toolkit. So on November 1st, we held a general JMHCP orientation webinar, and that webinar, in addition to having Maria speak, we also had your grants managers and budget speak regarding the grants management and budget options. We talked a little bit broader about technical assistance, and the goal of the webinar today is really to talk specifically about the requirements of your grant category, which is Category 3 Implementation and Expansion. We do have this webinar available on our website, and the slides are also available via that link. So I'm going to turn it back over to Maria to give an overview of Category 3 JMHCP grantees this year.
All right, thanks, Sarah. So JMHCP is focused on innovation. We work to address mental illness and co-occurring substance use disorders in the justice system through partnership, programming, and policy change. This includes law enforcement, pretrial, courts, jails, prisons, and community supervision. We fund both adult and juvenile programs through JMHCP focused on behavioral health diversion and reentry strategies. Your cohort for Category 3 this year includes 22 different jurisdictions representing 17 different states. We have 2 states, Missouri and Ohio, with multiple Category 3 awards this year. The Implementation and Expansion grantee are the most diverse of JMHCP grant categories. Grantees have a range of focuses, like crisis responses by law enforcement, juvenile pretrial, mental health courts, jail and prison-based diversion programs, crisis intervention team training, and corrections and correctional facilities, reentry for people with co-occurring substance use and mental disorders. Every awardee is doing really interesting and innovative work, and we look forward to learning more about your programs throughout this grant process. Your grant award is for up to $300,000 for 24 months or 2 years. The common thread among grantees is developing collaborative strategies to address mental illness and co-occurring substance use disorder and increase public safety. Next slide. Each grantee will be focused on implementing a plan or expanding upon an already existing program. Due to the variety of grantees, there are a lot of allowable uses for the grant category that include behavioral health treatment, recovery support services, specialized training, case management, and responses for specific disciplines such as law enforcement, pretrial, courts, and correctional facilities. Next slide. We have all the bullets on this slide represented in the new cohort with a strong focus on building behavioral health diversion and diversion strategies from law enforcement to pretrial, to courts, to corrections, to community supervision. This is really about making the connections between contact with the justice system and behavioral health treatment for those who need it, making sure those who need the services are able to access services not just at a program level, but throughout your system. We would like you to think about how to connect your criminal justice system across disciplines through your work and make sure that law enforcement is talking to courts and jail is talking to community supervision. Pretrial and community-based providers are included in that conversation as well. Each point in the system is able to connect with each other to have a cross-system strategy for meeting the behavioral health needs of people in the justice system. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Sarah, who will tell you more about technical assistance for Category 3 JMHCP grantees. Sarah?
Thanks so much, Maria. It's always so interesting to hear about the big range of grantees we have for Category 3. So one of the focuses that was briefly mentioned on the other orientation webinar is really thinking through behavioral health diversion strategies. And as you heard from what Maria said, there's just a large variety of grantees. And one connection is really this focus and thinking on behavioral health diversion, from pre-booking diversion, which are mainly law enforcement responses, to jail-based, court-based, pretrial responses. Within this grant category, we really have all of those things. And over the course of the next year, we're working to develop additional resources on behavioral health diversion strategies for grantees that we'll be able to use moving forward. So along with these strategies, which you can see on the left is the same graphic, it's really the linkage that Maria was talking about between the criminal justice and to community-based care, including the type of treatment options are available in your community and the other services folks might need, such as peer support, case management, supportive housing, crisis services, and really making sure the full range of services is available in the community. So really connecting the criminal justice diversion options to the community in order to make sure people have access to care. So we have different technical assistance approaches. This first slide is on distance-based TA, so what we're able to do with you remotely, which for most of your grant period over the course of 2 years, your technical assistance will be remote. We're going to have monthly calls with you, so you should have all received information or will receive very soon information of who your technical assistance provider is. That person will work to set up an introductory call with you in December and then have recurrent monthly calls for the remainder of your grant period. We also have guides, which are implementation and expansion guides, in order to really walk you through a planning and an implementation process for your grant programs, to think through the services that you have, the services that you're funding to enhance or expand your program, and how that fits into overall visions of what's going on within your jurisdiction. We'll have peer-to-peer learning opportunities, so we are always trying to think of ways to connect you with other jurisdictions doing similar work, either within this year's cohort of grantees or other current grantees or past grantees. We also do web-based training, so this is, a webinar, but we have other topical-based web-based trainings, and we'll have a number of those coming up. We're going to do a couple of web-based training on working with people with intellectual and developmental disabilities, for example. You also have access to experts, so at the Council of State Governments Justice Center, we have a lot of expertise on staff here and also through consultants that we work with. So we're able to connect you with folks who are either members of our learning sites or through people that we've worked with in the past. So there's always abilities to answer questions that you might have. We also are able to share resources and tools. So if there's a specific topic you're looking for information on, let's say you want to select a pretrial risk assessment tool, for example, that's something we're able to have information on and send you information once we work with our colleagues to get together a good list of what you might be looking for. We also have the ability to do in-person technical assistance as part of this grant. As part of your budget, you put in funds in order to be able to attend an orientation and conference. And then we are able to do site visits for some grantees, not necessarily all grantees, but we look forward to being able to see everyone in person at the national meetings. So for this grant category, we have really 2 tracks. We have a more general track, and then we have a law enforcement specific track, which is really what Nikki's going to go over. So the implementation and expansion guide that I'm going over is for any non-law enforcement grantee. So these are the sections of the guide. So we really talk about just what your goals are of the grant program, how that fits into strategic diversion strategies within your jurisdiction, and how this really fits into what you're doing either at the local or the state level, depending on what type of grantee you are. We go through developing collaborative partnerships. So this is really a cornerstone of JMHCP, thinking through the work between mental health, behavioral health, and criminal justice. So really looking across that, who is a member of your task force or advisory group? What does that look like? How can you engage additional partners in order to be able to provide additional services? Really thinking through what the target population is through the grant, so making sure that if you provided a number of people that you'd like to serve through the grant, that you're able to meet that, and really thinking through how you're really selecting people for the program and services that you're able to do, whether it be, screening everyone in your system to doing an intervention with a smaller number of people within your jurisdiction. Thinking through what evidence-based services and supports are available, so from recovery support services to different evidence-based practices for cognitive behavioral therapy or for co-occurring substance use and mental disorders. There's just a wide variety of things that people do under this, so we want to make sure that you have a full picture of what you're doing in the program and what's funded by the grant and funded by other sources. We then go into data collection, performance measurement, and program evaluation. So this is a big priority, is really thinking through how you track the work in your program and are able to share that. Helps with sustainability. It also helps with making sure that you're keeping on track as part of your grant program. And the program evaluation piece was really a priority that the Bureau of Justice Assistance had laid out as part of the grant program. So we want to make sure that those who are able to get that type of data are really getting what they need and what's responsive to their jurisdictions. We also talk about sustainability and really thinking through how you can make a case to continue your work after the grant program funding ends. And then we have supporting resources, which are different webinars, different publications, different things that are helpful on a variety of topics, from research and evaluation to risk assessment to other evidence-based practices and things along those lines. So I'm going to hand it over, one more slide actually. Then the other thing just to follow up on that would be the resources and tools. So we have a bunch of resources and tools that we're able to provide, like the appendix that I mentioned there. In addition to the planning and implementation guide, there's a bunch of different resources that we've developed over the years, including a whole toolkit on the Stepping Up website. There is a framework for addressing criminogenic risk and behavioral health needs, as well as a mental health court curriculum that are all really good resources. I'm going to turn it over to Nikki, who will talk about the law enforcement guide as well as the police mental health collaboration pieces.
Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, everyone, for joining us again, and a huge congratulations on being awarded the Category 3 Implementation and Expansion JMHCP Grant. Sarah did a great job of discussing the Implementation and Expansion Guide, and as she mentioned, the guide is a great tool for grantees, but it also serves an important tool for your CSG Justice Center TA providers to understand the status and progress of your project, the types of challenges you're encountering, and the ways your TA provider might be helpful to you in making your project successful. You and your TA provider will use your responses to do a self-assessment, and that will help to collaboratively develop priorities for your technical assistance. In terms of the actual guide, we follow a similar structure to the guide that Sarah just explained to the group. We're getting started on identifying goals, and for that we're looking for basic information on your grant program. While we have all the documentation that you submitted for your application, we want to ensure that we're all on the same page. So we're talking with you about your project goals, we're talking to you about your basic information on your grant, your program focus areas, and just learning more about your program and your jurisdiction, which is really important for us to provide you with technical assistance. For Section 2, developing your collaborative planning committee and project team, again, stakeholder engagement and leadership is a huge part of what we do and stress in our technical assistance that we provide. So we want to learn about your interagency committees. We want to learn about your project team. We want to get a better understanding of who's on these teams and the structure of these teams and the frequency in which you meet with these teams. The third section on tracking mental health-related calls for service is really important for us, and also to get an understanding of what you're doing in terms of data, whether or not you're identifying patterns in mental health calls for service, and what those patterns look like. The fourth section, applying the essential elements of a specialized law enforcement-based program, and we're making some changes to that, and I'll get a little more into that in a little while, but we're looking at you to define your law enforcement training program and curriculum. Again, Sarah mentioned the diversity of the grantees that we get, and many of our grantees are doing training, whether it be in crisis intervention team training, mental health first aid, or some other type of mental health or de-escalation training. We want to learn about that training. We want to learn about the number of hours that you're training. We want to learn about the curriculum that you're using. So we'll have exercises to gather all of that information. We're also very much interested in looking at the process flow from calls for service to final disposition. What does that look like when a call comes into 911 to the end of that session, of that process for final disposition? Equally important is your policy procedures and stakeholder agreements. Do we have formal policies and procedures in place? Have those policies and procedures being shared with your staffing? Is everyone familiar with the policy and procedures? Do we need to make adjustments to policy and procedures? One thing that we're really keen on is information sharing. And is there a policy document that speaks directly to information sharing? What information should be shared? Who has responsibility over that information? So all of those are key elements to what we will be talking with you regarding the specialized law enforcement-based program that you're putting in place or that you're enhancing. Section 5 talks about data collection, performance measurement, and program evaluation. Also very important. If you can't measure it, you can't know what to do with the information that you have. Do we have robust data collection processes in place? Do we have robust data collection analyses, and are we using this data to guide our practice? So we'll be talking with you more about that. And I think for many of our grantees and the TA providers, from the minute we get you, we are talking with you about sustainability, planning, and program sustainability. We need you to clarify your vision. We need to talk with you about funding sources for sustainability. We are talking with you about stakeholder engagement, and are there other stakeholders that should be involved in your program? We're talking with you also about using data to drive sustainability. So that's what we will look at when we're talking through the planning and implementation guide. Next slide, please. Much of our work and the technical assistance we provide is guided by a police mental health collaboration framework. The police mental health collaboration framework, also known as the PMHC framework, is intended to assist local leaders, including elected officials, law enforcement, and behavioral health agency executives, and their senior personnel who want to begin or improve the outcomes of their police mental health collaborations. There are 6 questions that are attached to this police mental health collaboration framework. Is our leadership committed to the police mental health collaboration? That's really crucial. Is there leadership buy-in and support for collaboration at multiple levels? Do we have buy-in at the program level, at the executive leadership level, at the local government level? Is there commitment to making funding and resource allocation decisions? And is there a designated person being assigned to lead the efforts? Is there a coordinator or a manager position in place? So leadership is really crucial. The second question, are we following clear protocols to respond to people who have mental illnesses? Really important as we think through our grant program, as we think through our technical assistance as well, how best can we guide you through this process? We're hoping that each agency that we're working with will have a clear and good protocols in place, that the protocols are comprehensive and all staff are aware of the protocols. I mentioned earlier, and this is something you will hear consistently from your TA providers, the importance of protocols having information sharing agreements. Who will be responsible for this information? What information will be shared? And also, equally important is the supervisor's review and determination if staff are properly following the protocols. So it's very important for you to think through, again, the entire process from call for service to final disposition, and are there protocols in place for that? The third question, are we providing staff with quality mental health and de-escalation training? Again, a lot of our grantees come to us doing some level of training to their staff. What are the topics that we're talking about? Are there topics based on knowledge, topics based on skills, topics based on other issues such as community resources? What are the instrumental methods or instructional methods that are being used? Are we using simulations and or virtual training? Are we doing role play, which is a huge part of CIT training? Are we doing site visits, and are we doing ride-alongs? Who is involved with the presentation and who is facilitating this training? Are subject matter experts involved? Are we getting law enforcement personnel and also mental health or behavioral health personnel involved in the training? Really important that all the main stakeholders are involved in the training. Are we involving people who have mental illnesses, their family members, and advocates in the training as well? And is there a specialized training, an additional training for senior officers? And also, is the training evaluated through pre- and post-testing? The fourth question, do we have the resources and services connections for people who have mental illnesses? As we've provided technical assistance through the last 5 years, and as we work with other jurisdictions, we're realizing that this is a big issue for many jurisdictions, just in terms of identifying what resources are in place and what possible gaps are in place and what needs to be done. So as we meet with you, we want you to think through what is needed in your specific jurisdiction. Do you have crisis services? Are they adequate crisis services? Are there an assortment of behavioral health services? What are these services? Is there integrated treatment options? Is there programming for criminogenic needs? Many of us, and we hear it consistently, that many jurisdictions are in favor of having some type of receiving center or crisis stabilization center. Is that something that's in place in your jurisdiction? Or do we have warm lines? Do we have crisis services or mobile crisis services? And we'll go through a host of different treatment services for us to think through as we work with you on your grant program. The fifth question, do we collect and analyze data? Really important, something that we stress from the beginning to the end of our work with you. Are we collecting data, measures that service demands, measures looking at, for instance, the time consumed on a mental health call for service? Are we analyzing this data? Is there some level of gap analysis being done to determine needs? Are we using this data to make key decisions to allocate funds or develop programming? What are the types of data that we're collecting? Are we collecting police process measures, for example, number of officers trained? Are we collecting police operational measures, for example, including number of calls for service involving people who have mental illnesses, or repeat calls for services, or for those who are high utilizers of our system? Are we capturing that data? Are we capturing high utilizers? Are we capturing locations that are causing increased call for services? Are we looking, for instance, at the frequency of police disposition decisions? Are calls being resolved at the scene? Are we making referrals to mental health resources, etc.? And equally important is collecting data on use of force and injury measures. Example, the frequency or type of use of force, the number of injuries or fatalities to officers, consumers, or third party. All very important. And the sixth question, do we have a process for reviewing and improving performance? Have we established a process for this review and evaluation of our performance, for continually improving our police mental health collaboration efforts? Is there a process of prioritizing and identifying agency infrastructure and coordination needs? Are we coordinating across law enforcement and behavioral health agencies to ensure the PMHC is effective? Are leaders using performance measures and desired outcomes to identify breakdown in those outcomes aren't being met? So that's a huge part of what we will be doing with you, and we're hoping that we will get all our grantees to go through these 6 questions, and this will help you to improve public safety and public health in your community by increasing connections to behavioral health resources and treatment, by reducing repeated encounters with law enforcement, by reducing arrest when appropriate, and by reducing injuries to both officers and people with behavioral health. Next. Sarah mentioned earlier some of the resources that we have. There are a number of resources that we will tap into while we're working with you throughout your award. There are publications available on the CSG Justice Center website. The Police Mental Health Collaboration Toolkit, which was launched last year, was developed and is housed on the Bureau of Justice Assistance webpage. This is an online toolkit which provides a host of resources around the planning and implementation of your police mental health collaboration. It also looks at training, it looks at management of your police mental health collaboration, and it looks at measuring performance. And I would encourage everyone on this call to take some time to visit the Police Mental Health Collaboration Toolkit and check on the resources that are online. And please feel free also to give us your feedback. We also have our law enforcement mental health learning sites, and this is a national effort that started in 2010. And this was done in an effort to expand the knowledge base for law enforcement agencies that were interested in either starting or enhancing a police mental health collaboration. The Justice Center, with the assistance from a team of national experts and the U.S. Justice Department's Bureau of Justice Assistance, selected 6 police departments to serve as national law enforcement mental health learning sites. And those sites are Houston Police Department, Los Angeles Police Department, Madison Police Department, Portland, Maine Police Department, Salt Lake City Police Department, and the University of Florida. We're actually currently in the process of expanding the Learning Sites program to include a possible 4 more locations. We know how important it is for grantees to learn from each other, and with that in mind, we strive to make connections between our justice and mental health collaboration grantees and our learning sites for peer-to-peer learning. And with that, I will turn over to Sarah.
Thank you, Nikki. So we are actually going to, I'm now going to turn it over to Joanne Barros, who's the Director of Mental Health for Norfolk County Sheriff's Office in Massachusetts, and she's going to share a little bit about her experience as a grantee.
Thank you very much, and good afternoon, everybody. I just wanted to congratulate everyone on their award ceremony. I'm very excited to be here this afternoon with you. Just really briefly, my background is in corrections. I've been in corrections for almost 14 years, and my schooling background is in mental health counseling. I've always been interested in the criminal justice system and really seeing the convergence of both fields, so it's a very exciting time for me. At the Norfolk Sheriff's Office, we recognize that we're part of a continuum and that 97 and 98% of our individuals are releasing back into the community. We play a critical role in continuity of care, and we wanted to be active participants in all the efforts that are going on in the community right now. So as a step in that direction, we began to attend community meetings where we recognize the vast variety of disciplines coming to the table: police, community providers, paramedics, hospital providers, and really recognizing that we all needed to come to the table to bridge any gaps and to open up the lines of communication. What I really noticed and I really admired is that this has led to increased respect among disciplines, increased understanding of what difficulties each field can face, and really the passion that everybody has in wanting to come together to provide good care for the individuals that we're treating. A little background of our grant proposal, we ended up recognizing that within a structured environment, like a correctional setting, individuals have access to scheduled appointments, medication, a lot of things that potentially when they leave and they go out into the community, they end up having to face a system that can be quite complicated and overwhelming. It can be hard to navigate this system. So we recognize the need to assist them early on before they release to kind of start to set those things in place and make sure that they had sort of a warm handoff when they enter the community. What we noticed was that even if we scheduled appointments for individuals, they were often not showing up to their first or second appointments. And when they would come back into custody, they would cite that it was difficult for them to arrange transportation to their meetings, or they forgot about their appointments or their meetings, a whole host of influences from the community that potentially hindered their ability to participate in their treatment. So we collaborated with an outside agency, and our program design is to have somebody come in from this community provider. This community provider can provide services, wraparound services, mental health, substance use treatment, medical treatment. They can provide transportation to and from appointments. They can make home visits. And by connecting somebody in-house with a familiar face, once an individual comes in through our intake process, we have 4 questions that we ask them. Typically, it's related to their mental health history and criminogenic needs. If they get identified as good matches for our program, then we have somebody who represents this program, a consistent staff member, come in, meet with them, create individualized treatment plans, and then assist them as they transition back into the community. It's a 1-year plan with a gradual introduction of independence, where basically there's a lot of staff support in those initial 3 months, and then the case gets reevaluated again with some gradual introduction of independence, again at the 6-month mark, 9-month mark, and then a 1-year follow-up just to see how the individual is doing. So basically to help people transition from the structured environment of corrections out to the community. And as we know, there can be long waits to get a provider or to get to medication appointments. So we kind of try to really cut that down with the implementation of this new program. We were very fortunate to get an excellent policy analyst, and this has been really pivotal in providing that structured support that we really need. Our planning and implementation guide really came together by bringing all the disciplines that have anything to do with our program classification, program staff, mental health, medical, security staff. So we again sort of modeled the community meetings that we saw happening, and we brought them in-house into our correctional setting, where we brought everyone to the table and we used the guide as really our sort of grounding center, where we could all kind of come together, evaluate each section, recognize what the next step that needed to be completed was, and really work on gathering the pertinent information. It was really a focal point to help bring everyone together. Certain areas of the planning and implementation guide pertain perhaps to one specialty over another, so everybody really pulled together to get whatever data they had that was needed, so that then I could implement it into the P&I guide. I could type it in, enter it, and then send it to our policy analyst, who was wonderful about reviewing it, helping us sort of gain some direction if we were potentially not getting enough data or pertinent data that was necessary. If we seemed a little bit off track, we were getting all the guidance that we needed. And we also work closely with our fiscal department just to make sure that everything that we do is meeting the grant parameters. So if nothing else, it really shows the need for that cohesive partnership and collaboration among all disciplines. The policy analyst also helped set up monthly calls, as was mentioned earlier, which was a great opportunity. In between calls, we would forward any documentation that was necessary, or we would forward any questions that we had. And then the phone call was really the opportunity to be able to sit in the office and then be able to have that undivided attention and time just to focus on the planning and implementation guide and make sure we were answering everything that we needed to and that we were also reaching our benchmark goals. Once we completed our planning and implementation guide, we sent the final copy to the state policy advisor, who's assigned to our grant, just to make sure that that piece was completed and in good standing. And we also, we were very grateful and appreciative to have the orientation conference, which took place a few months ago, which was another opportunity to have access to VJA staff to help guide us in this process, while also providing us with a great opportunity to network with other award grantees and really kind of get a lot of our questions answered from hands-on experience. In addition to our grant, we're also doing a piece on research. Our agency really feels that research is really critical in validating, hopefully validating what we're doing and really giving us some tangible numbers and outcomes and really quantifying what we're doing. So as part of our grant work, we've also partnered with Northeastern University, who will be tracking individuals who participate in this treatment program that we've designed and looking at things like recidivism rate, participation in treatment in the community, whether their interactions with law enforcement in the community decrease, those kinds of things. And this will be something that takes place over a course of time to make sure that we're really kind of able to attain hopefully the data that we're looking for. And some of the challenges that we overcame, and again, every day I think is kind of a fluid system, so we are always working together to kind of overcome any issues that might pop up. But through the planning and implementation guide, which really structures regular interactions among the disciplines, we've really come a long way in the last year, and really this process being very fluid and everybody sort of being on the same page in an almost seamless and effortless way. Some of the challenges, the main one I would say was really, since we have the research piece and we have the grant piece and then we also have this partnership with a community provider, it was making sure that all the parameters are honored and respected and that everything is followed based on the guidelines. So the grant has its own parameters, the research partner has its own expectations, and then also our vendor and the community have their own parameters, making sure that they're matching the appropriate people up to the program services that they're able to offer. So I think bringing all those pieces together at times was a little bit of a hurdle, but everybody was great about communicating and really working on things, being able to view maybe a situation from different angles. And the P&I guide is really kind of what we consistently have come back to gain clarification if something seems unclear and we need a little bit of a redirection or some guidance. Thank you very much. I didn't know if there was anything else that you needed me to add.
Thanks so much, Joanne, for providing that wealth of information. I think that's great, and we're actually, from here, we're going to move on to questions and answers. So for anyone on the call who has any questions, you can feel free to enter it in a chat box, and we'll also open the lines as well.
Okay.
I'm going to turn it over to Nikki to facilitate this piece.
Thank you, Sarah. So we have a question coming in, and I think I'll ask this of Maria. Have all JMHCP grant budgets been approved? And if not, when do we anticipate final approval of budgets?
Thank you, Nikki. So it does take a little bit of time for those budgets to be approved. Our hope is hopefully by Christmas. they have to go through a process here at BJA to go through your policy advisor on the grant management side that will review the budget. And also they then go to the Office of Fiscal Control, OCFO, and they will also review. One of the biggest holdups, I guess, to be quite frank, in having a budget approved is whether or not the grantee has addressed all of the special conditions and especially withholdings. So that will be very important at the onset, is to go back through all those special conditions when you did sign and accept your award and upload that into GMS and ensure that you have addressed all the special conditions on your grant award. There's a set of standard grant conditions that go to everyone, and then there are sometimes specific grant conditions, or what is called withholdings, specific to your program and your jurisdiction and what may be happening in the grant management in your community. So really important to look at those and address those. And then the other piece of that, I would say, to ensure that you have good open lines of communication to make sure that if there is any issue with your budget that you can get it quickly resolved, is to go ahead and ensure that the point of contact, the authorizing official, point of contact, financial point of contact, that these are good current ways to reach people on the ground that are doing the work with the grant, so that if your grant manager needs to reach out to you to say, hey, there's one or two more things that need to get wrapped up here so we can get this budget approved, make sure that those people are accessible and that their contact information is current. But other than that, it does take about, a month or two. We're already, of course, I know it's just about Thanksgiving. I don't think everybody's budget is approved. I know they're pushing them through as quickly as they can, and I think when it gets to be a time when we need to start questioning, then I will work with CSG and we'll gather up whose budget is not approved yet, and then we'll start, sort of doing some inquiry as to why, so that we can get those issues wrapped up and get moving on the program.
Thank you, Maria. And thank you. You responded to actually another question which was asking for a bit more information on special conditions. So thank you for covering that.
Good.
A number of the questions are coming to you, so prepare yourself with possibly a glass of water. Can you explain the $100,000 withholding for completion of the P&I guide?
Okay, so the P&I guide it's very important that this become a tool to really work through the entire program with your TA provider. We found that in the past we've had some programs to hold out till the very end to complete that guide, and really, the intention is to work with your TA provider throughout the life of your grant to complete it. And so we have to sort of hold back on some funding so that planning can really take place, and it can be a really solid foundation for the launch of your program and the continuation and sustainment of your program. And on the second part of that, there was an issue with the grants management side on an inability to get in and close out programs when they ended, because we were still missing some P&I guides. So we had to sort of take some measures to sort of, I guess, kind of get that a little bit closer to the front end of the life of the grant.
Thank you, Maria. A question came in during the discussion of the planning and implementation, or now implementation and expansion grantees, and it's around the role that we see the jail playing in this process. And I think that came in during my discussion about the PMHC framework. The PMHC framework is largely put in place for law enforcement agencies that have some level of collaboration with mental health or behavioral health. But the way the framework is written, it can be used across many agencies. I think also I'll ask Sarah just to speak on this in terms of the work that they're doing with behavioral health diversion strategies.
Yeah, thank you, Nikki, and thanks for that point of clarification. So we are developing, as I mentioned, a web-based tool on behavioral health diversion strategies, and that's really focusing on connections of multiple systems from law enforcement to pretrial to courts to jails, community supervision, to really think through options to get people into community-based behavioral health care. And a lot of our grantees are actually jail-based grantees. You heard from Joanne. She works for the Sheriff's Department in a correctional facility in Massachusetts. So we view the jail having a huge role in this, as well as the other partners as well. We're trying to encourage people to partner with people across the different systems, so that way whatever great things you're doing in the jail to address mental illness, co-occurring substance use disorders, you're also having a connection with the community, with the courts, with community supervision, and with law enforcement to make sure that all of the good work that's being done through JMHCP is really a strategy that is across the county, the local jurisdiction, or the state.
Thank you, Sarah. Another question, when will our assigned TA be contacting us? Is it in December? I want to put this on my calendar. Sarah, can you take that one, please?
Sure, that's a great question. So many of you may have actually already received an email from your TA providers, but if you haven't, you will before the end of the month. So within the next week, you'll receive an email from your primary TA provider, and they will, of course, give you greetings and welcomes, but they'll also list some dates and times for a potential call in December. So there isn't a specific date and time for everyone to connect on that because it's individualized. So the TA provider will actually provide you with 3 or 4 dates and times that might work, and then you will let the TA provider and work with them to schedule a time that works for you and your team.
Thank you, Sarah. This one for Maria. When will we be able to access the required reporting in BJA's PMT to determine what will be required of us?
So that's a very good question. I think we will have to put that information out post-webinar.
Okay.
It sounds like it may not be accessible. I'm thinking this person is asking because they're not able to access it and see it. I know that there is that our team here is perhaps doing some work on the PMT, and I think that there is a temporary right now, and I was in some discussion around some changes that are being made. So I would have to ask you to just put that question on hold, and if you don't see some information put out globally, to please reach back out to us. I know that the PMT team is going to make a link available, and I think it's going to be sort of an interim report until the permanent changes can be made to that report.
Thank you, Maria.
Mm-hmm.
A question for Sarah. Has the date been set for the DC orientation and training?
Thank you, and that's a great question. We're actually in the process of working with the Bureau of Justice Assistance to hopefully get a date for the orientation and training. Right now, we are looking at dates within June, and once we have more information or are able to have any confirmation, we will reach out to grantees and make sure that folks are able to hold those dates on the calendar, because we know that doing this in advance and getting approval from your jurisdiction in advance is really critical. So we're committed to getting you the information once we have it.
Thank you, Sarah. Another question, are there examples of law enforcement policies and procedures as they relate to behavioral health that can be shared with grantees? We do, in fact, have a number of policy and procedure documents, including the model policy that was put out by the International Association of Chiefs of Police that we will be able to share with you. We have other policy and procedure documents that we have gotten from some of our learning sites that we will be able to share with you. But again, if you have a chance to visit the PMHC Toolkit, there is a section on policies and procedures with examples of policies and procedures that are out there that will guide you. But your TA providers will be able to share some of those with you. We have examples of business agreements, for instance, between law enforcement and mental health. And we also have examples of universal release forms that is used to share information across entities. So more to come on that once you meet with your TA providers. Another question, Maria, in regards to hiring or spending funds, do we need to wait until budgets are approved and or TA person has contacted us?
Yes, you would not want to incur any expenses until your budget is approved. I know that this is a very sort of a tricky time because it's an interim time. You want to make sure that you sort of keep people that you intended to fill those positions close, but at the same time, we have to have a budget approved before we can actually hire them on and make an offer in terms of salary. It'll be very, very important to have your budget approved before you incur costs, that, you know, we just kind of have to pay attention to that, and if it doesn't happen in a timely manner, to be sure to reach out to your TA provider or myself or your grants manager and begin to inquire if there's an issue that you're not aware, that you feel like you've taken care of everything and you're not understanding why your budget hasn't been approved. So we'll have to keep a close watch on that to make sure we don't lose any time.
Thank you, Maria. Another question for you as well, Maria. Who should we talk to about whether or not we need to develop subcontract paperwork?
Say that question again. Who they need to talk to?
Who should they talk to if they need to develop subcontracts?
Okay, if they need to develop subcontracts, then that would be their grants manager, or in other words, another name for a grants manager is a state policy advisor here at BJA, and these are the folks that are going to manage your program, sort of the day-to-day post-award. They are the folks that understand what needs to be in a contract, submitting the correct forms, how to upload that in GMS. But I would also urge you to go back and take a look at that, the webinar where we had that link up on the screen, because within that webinar also contains a lot of process information around GMS and also some contacts, some resource contacts in terms of getting your questions answered, how to navigate GMS. So that's going to be really important for you once you can identify what forms you need to fill out, how to fill them out, and then how to submit them. Those are going to be some really important questions between you and your grants manager.
Thank you, Maria. And with the mention of the grants manager, someone just typed, we're having difficulty reaching our grant manager. We have sent emails and calls but not receiving any responses. Is there another individual that they should be reaching out to?
Okay, so the important thing is sometimes I can't always figure out what's happening on the grants management side, but I can tell you the best thing that you can do as a grantee when you're not getting, you know, a response is, first I say, with all the best in my heart, to do your homework. You know, go to the financial guide and see what you can find there to get an answer. Go to a lot of the help resources and numbers that we've provided and links, and see if you can get your question there to do a lot of self-help. Grant managers, I can tell you, are extremely overwhelmed, especially right now trying to get budgets pushed through and approved, so they have to review all those. And so not only we want them to do that quickly, but it's hard because we need our questions answered as well. So I would say, one, do your homework, use all the resources that we gave you. Once you've done that and you still are unclear or you do not have an answer, then I would say to reach out to your TA provider or myself, and then we'll try to get it resolved for you.
Great, thank you. And one more question regarding budgets. How do we know if our budgets have been approved? We accepted the reward, but did send in edits. We haven't heard anything back on that.
You should have a notice in GMS once your budget is approved, and you can actually go into GMS and you can find where it's approved on your own. It should be posted there.
Great. Thank you, Maria. One more question coming your way. You're the popular one today, Maria.
All right.
If all conditions or withholdings have been cleared, how long does it take the manager to approve those changes and submit again to clear the holding?
The amount of time. So, like, absolutely no issues whatsoever. like it should go straight on through to OCFO. It really depends on the volume that they have and how many are they able to get through, and sort of where your budget is in the pipeline. But like I said, I think we are going to, once the holidays pass, we are going to take a temperature, we're going to get lists, we're going to see who's where and what are the reasons and where do they stand in that long line, and sort of try to figure out, triage what we can do to move it along. I promise you this is a really important aspect of launching your programs in my view, and what the work that you do is really important to me. And I also know that you, in order for your technical assistance to be meaningful to you, you have to be actually operational. So this is very important to us here and very important to your TA provider, and so we're going to try to push it through in a timely manner as best we can.
Thank you. There's a question earlier on, has the definition of violent offender changed by BJA?
So I'm going to have to get, there is specific language in the 21st Century Cures Act. I'm not going to try to speak to that at this time. There has been a change. I would like to get that out globally. Let us review the language and get it posted for you.
Thank you, Maria. Sarah, did you have anything you wanted to add to that response?
Nope, just exactly what Maria said. So that language did change in the 21st Century Cures Act, and we'll work with Bureau of Justice Assistance to give any guidance needed for justice and mental health collaboration program grantees to make sure that everyone's meeting their grant requirements.
Great, thank you, Sarah. And with that, that is the last of our questions. So I'll hand back over to you, Sarah.
Great, thank you so much, Nikki. Just want to thank everyone for taking the time today to speak with us. You should expect to hear from your technical assistance provider within the next week if you haven't already. And you have the contact information for all the speakers here today, so you can feel free to reach out to any of us. Just want to thank Joanne Barros from Norfolk County Sheriff's Office, Maria Fryer from the Bureau of Justice Assistance, Nikki Smith-Key from the CSG Justice Center, all for participating. I want to thank all of the grantees for taking time out of your busy schedules. We're really looking forward to working with you over the course of the next 2 years to make sure that some great innovations happen at the intersection of mental illness and criminal justice. So thank you to everyone, and have a good day.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to present, and I'm happy to help anybody that has any questions. I know you mentioned there are a lot of correctional facilities, so please feel free to reach out to me by email or phone, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks so much, Joanne. You're such a great resource. We will definitely take you up on that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good day, everyone.
Bye.
Happy Thanksgiving.
You too.